We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is MJ Maurer, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm an account executive at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Heidi Newiger. She is the Senior Manager of Employee Experience and Engagement at Harness. Heidi, to kick things off, tell us about yourself, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, how did you answer the question, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Hi, I'm Heidi. I am a Bay Area native and I live in Oakland, California. Things I enjoy, I love long walks and great conversations, cooking, traveling, being with friends and family, and I'm generally happiest by a beach. For work, I get to work on really great programs that engage and include our employees from around the globe to really, make sure that we're fostering an inclusive climate and a place that people can do their best work. And when I was younger, I wanted to be an actress.
I love that. So tell me, Heidi, how has your personal journey led you to this role at Harness?
I have a lot of energy and I tend to be really passionate about whatever it is I'm working on. And early in my career, I poured that passion and kind of heart and soul into building out university recruitment programs. So hiring, fresh grads and interns and really making sure that they were entering the workplace in kind of a smooth transition from this academia world to tech. And I spent so many hours like getting to know these people and going back and forth on interviews and offers, and it really hurt my soul when people just did not accept that offer. I got really bummed, and I had envisioned this relationship working with them and what that would be like. And diversity and inclusion is something that's really near and dear to my heart, and it's always kind of been a priority for me. And university recruiting and DEIB kind of go hand in hand. And so it was a no-brainer to kind of include diversity and inclusion work in the programs I was building for campus recruitment. And, that work kind of let me not only build things for the university, but kind of I helped found our first, women's ERG, and then was invited to be part of our overall belonging board in that role at AppDynamics at the time. And I was noticing that the work that I was doing on the diversity and inclusion initiatives with the people who I worked with at the company was just so rewarding, because there were these relationships that I was able to build, and I would be able to kind of see the fruit of all of that work in my experience as an employee at that company. And so, I really started thinking about what that next step in my career was going to be, and was evaluating what I loved about my current job and what felt missing. And, really the ability to collaborate and build meaningful relationships that are going to go over time was something that I wanted to do. And while I was in that role at that company, I spent almost 5.5 years there, and the whole thing just blew up. So I was like, I'm around employee 100. I left after we were acquired by Cisco. We were like a 2,000 person company, and I wanted to kind of take a sabbatical to reconnect with myself and see what that next step would be. And that's kind of how I came to this realization of reflecting back on what I wanted. And so, I think it was a natural kind of flow to come back to people programs and working with a bunch of different folks cross-functionally, but this time with kind of my eyes on the prize of employee experience. So I'm super fortunate to have been given the opportunity to build that with kind of no real HR experience here at Harness.
I love that. That is such an awesome story and journey. Leaning into a company culture, which is just such a huge part of employee experience. From your perspective, what are some real qualitative or quantitative ways that we might want to measure company culture?
So the qualitative is a little bit harder than the quantitative, but we definitely have some measures around that. So qualitative is, what are people saying? And I care about what people are saying, to me, but also to the business partners that we have, to their friends and family at dinner when they're, sitting frustrated on their computer and reflecting on their day, their job. Work is such a huge part of our life. what are people saying to their networks and to themselves, right? And so, you know, I like to think about like Glassdoor or any kind of the more external facing social media platforms, and definitely read what employees are saying or former employees are saying, and obviously take all that information with a grain of salt. I think about this, it's kind of in the same vein. We have a channel here at Harness on Slack called Life at Harness. And when I think about our culture, I think about this specific channel, which is a place where people from all over the globe share what's going on. Like, here's what I made for dinner, or here's how I spent my weekend with my family, or, we hear all kinds of personal accomplishments, professional accomplishments. We see what people are doing with their friends and their family. We see, everybody's right now at SKO in San Diego. We see all of their fun pictures that they're doing, and kind of like the sense of comfort that people have, like sharing and being so open with the company at large, I think is one of the qualitative ways you can kind of judge what people are feeling about their organization, right? They're going out of their way to take the time to build those relationships in this remote hybrid environment. When I think about quantitative data that would support like what a healthy culture looks like, I think of a couple surveys we do. So we use Culture Amp for our surveying, and we do kind of an employee engagement survey 3 times a year. So 2 pulse surveys that's like shorter check-ins to see, kind of how we're doing, and then 1 full engagement survey. And we are really serious about kind of the action stemming from that. So we share the company-wide actions. We have a culture committee called the Culture Canaries. And we talk about kind of what those outcomes are and why we think those outcomes might be, and suggest some actions in the form of programs coming out of those that will help hopefully move the needle in the areas that we want to target. And we kind of follow that same format, not only at the company level, but at the team level, right? So teams are given their results and they're asked to kind of review them, talk about them as an org, and then come up with 1 or 2 actions that they can take to improve something that they're experiencing on that team. So really inviting everybody to be part of the solution, right? And that helps them buy into it. And then we don't do this all in a vacuum. We share with the company at large how we're progressing, and kind of talk about, the survey results at company all hands meetings quarterly. So people know, hey, here's how we're doing. Here's what actions we're taking to better this experience for folks. And here's the progress of those. And so those are some of the ways that we measure company culture and know if we're kind of on track or off track.
I love that. I really particularly love the Culture Canaries. I think that is a very unique name for that crew. As we think about how we're reinventing the way that work happens and employee engagement, I'm curious to hear, how have you helped Harness and your team reinvent the way that work happens at the company, and what employee engagement looks like for y'all?
So the whole idea of work and how we get work done, I think, is just like a continuously evolving topic. It's 2022, August 2022 as we record this, and we're about 2.5 years into the pandemic. People are definitely returning to office, but it's not the same world that we left behind in 2020. And we're still figuring out, like, when are the right times to come into an office? Why would I spend my morning commuting to this place when I'm just going to be on Zoom calls all day? So really getting strategic about what types of events we invite people into an office for, when we have that time to kind of like collaborate and be in person and build that camaraderie and connection. And then when are the times that we can just kind of be remote, and how, when we're being remote, do we still create that sense of inclusion and connection across, the globe. So I think when I think about reinventing the way work happens, I think about one of our values. It happens to be my personal favorite value. So I know that there's some bias here, but it's a value called Remember the Human. And it really talks about realizing that everybody is a sum of their whole, and work is just one part of that person's identity. And, the differing perspectives that we all bring are going to enable us all as a team to create our best work, right? Individually and as an organization. And so really in challenging the the processes and the beliefs that people hold, to re-examine those by this value, remembering the human. And whether it's somebody who, for example, you're working remotely, and so you don't always know what people are doing, right? And so really giving folks that trust to say, hey, I see that you're getting your work done. And when I ping you at maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you don't respond for 3 hours, and that concerns me. But I'm going to take a step back from that and say, hey, it's okay, because you are an adult. I've hired you to do this job, and you're doing that job. And accepting that, right? And kind of getting used to it. It's a little bit different, and definitely difference and change in general for humans is uncomfortable, but remembering that and kind of going back to that and just being open to new ways of getting work done, I think is one thing that we've really been pushing across the business, and encouraging our managers to encourage employees as well to really figure out what works for them. Make sure, obviously they're going to the meetings they need to go to, their work is getting done, but being way more flexible about how that work gets done.
I love that. I think that leads really well into kind of the next question that we had here, talking about kind of global versus that local employee experience. You've got remote employees, you've got office employees, you've got a hybrid experience. What part of your employee experience strategy is global, and what part of that does need to remain local?
Great question, MJ. When I think about our overall strategy, right, we want people to feel connected to each other, to harness. We want, to create an intentional culture, values-based culture of camaraderie where people can really show up and reach their full potential, right? And how that comes, like, that's the global strategy. That's the hope of, my personal hope every day, that people are really feeling like, hey, this is a great place where I can do some really awesome work. I can learn things and develop individually. And I feel safe doing all these things at Harness. I think when you get to like the more regional or departmental kind of strategy around that, what those things might look like, what the culture of where, Harness is 700 and almost 80 people. And we've got employees in, I want to say 16 or 17 countries around the globe. And people are different in all of those areas, right? We have different cultures, different norms. And if we don't take those into consideration, we're going to be missing the ball there. So really thinking about how each region and also each team, what their best work looks like for them and how those things are delivered. So for example, let's get specific here. What teamwork in an office might look like, right? If we design all of our offices and they're all beautiful open spaces with whiteboards all over, that's fantastic for connecting and getting engineers on track to do their work, right? If we have an office that has a ton of salespeople with this open floor plan and a billion whiteboards all over, it's going to be really hard for them all to be on the phone all day, calling people and hearing what their customer is saying, right? And so really kind of looking at not only the dynamic of the role that someone's doing, but also where they're located and what like cultural norms of that locale might be when we're designing these things and figuring out what camaraderie is going to look like or what inclusion is going to look like for those specific teams. So for example, with kind of some of the diversity and inclusion work that we're doing at Harness, right? We surveyed all of the employees that we have to understand how they identify. And then we're prioritizing, the events that we do to the people that we have. So we make sure that there's some kind of, it resonates with our employee base. We want people to show up. We want people to be present. And if our agenda of things does not resonate with the team, it's not going to be meaningful to them.
Mm-hmm. You definitely have to be creating that in a way that it is resonating with those team members, that you're going to get the different team members who identify in different ways to different events, and encourage the whole organization to learn a little bit more about everybody. It's a big challenge whenever it comes to any form of event or engagement planning. I really loved how you brought up that remember the human core value. I saw whenever you first popped on the video and your background behind you. I think it's super amazing. As you think about that core value and everything else that you're working on, how does that contribute to how you're supporting the full lives of employees at Harness? I feel like that's probably a super important piece of that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first and foremost, I think traditionally business has not really thought about their employees as humans, right? Like, oh, you come to work and all of a sudden, like, the flat tire you had on the way in is no longer there. The fact that you have a sick kid is all right. Like, whatever fight you had with your partner is a-okay. Like, now we're at work. And that's just not, that's just not life, right? Like the emotions that we have as humans are going to transfer from one part of our life to the next. And it doesn't matter if we enter a work building or a work time or whatever, like we're still going to be, at least in the back of our brains, somewhat distracted by those things. So I think, first of all, having that value as one of our core values is amazing, that we're able to kind of lead by example in this way. And it translates to kind of the programs that we execute on. So last year we were not even 500 people when we started looking into a new benefit that would be a global benefit with, Carrot Modern Fertility, making sure that we had access for our entire team, again, before we're even 500 people. So to have these infertility benefits, which I think is just so cool. We, people are, especially in tech, folks tend to be on the younger side of things. So if you're starting to think about what family planning might look like for you, like, hey, we've got your back, we're supporting you. I think we were, like I said, 400 and something, maybe even 300 and something employees while we start to build out what this might look like. And then providing that is massive in my mind. I also think about this program, which is one of my favorite benefits at Harness. It's called the TGIF Off program. And, thank God it's Friday off. The goal of the program, going back to like kind of early COVID 2020, we were noticing that employees were not taking time off. And, it kind of made sense because there was nowhere to go. We were still very much in a lockdown across the country here, and in other countries that we operate in, like they were in even more serious lockdowns. And we still wanted our employees to stop working because from a mental health perspective, regardless of all of the uncertainty that was going on, you still need a break, right? You need to unplug, you need to recharge, and you can't always be in this work mode. And so the goal of the program was simply to give everybody an extra Friday off 10 times a year. It's all the same Friday, and it's basically a long weekend for you. So even if you don't want to take PTO to do nothing, not to do nothing, but at the time there was really nowhere you could go. And of course, the world has continued to open up since June of 2020, but it became a permanent benefit last year because it was so important that we give ourselves the time to kind of take away, sign off. If you want to, get some stuff done on your TGIF off, you can, but there's no expectation to. And, I mentioned our Life at Harness channel earlier, like every TGIF off Friday for the whole, like, Friday starting through the next week, people are just like posting in that channel all of these amazing things they're doing. We have an employee who is in a band with his sons, and so he'll like whip out all of the equipment and record them singing songs, which is super cool to see. We've seen people get engaged on TGIF off weekends, just like all of these amazing life events happen. And it's so cool to know that we're supporting people, even if you're just like running to the store to do all of your errands on that Friday, like you have an extra day to get that done. And it really tells me that we are walking the talk of caring about giving people that a little bit more of that work-life balance and encouraging them to like go do things that make them happy.
Oh man, I love that. I think that we often hear, and I've heard our own leadership team echo the sentiment that if you can get everybody off at once, it just becomes so much more calming because we can offer as much flexible time off as we want. But if you're off and the rest of your team is on, you're still going to get Slacks, you're still going to get emails. It's hard to really be off, and it's hard to come back from that. You're going to have more to catch up whenever you get back. So it's nice to provide a time where everybody's off at once.
Absolutely. My boss probably laughs at me because I'm always like, we should move to a 4-day work week. We should do this. We should take Christmas between New Year's off. Like, she's like, we need to work, Heidi, and we do need to work. And I totally appreciate that. I just know that so many people are working so hard. And the growth of Harness has just been incredible. So it's so exciting, and you can really see the impact of the work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I understand that sentiment, but at the end of the day, again, we are humans, and humans need breaks. We need to invest in other parts of our lives. And I'm just so grateful that this program encourages us to do it in such a forceful way.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, to wrap things up here for our final question, Heidi, what are 1 to 2 key insights that you hope our listeners bring with them after listening to this podcast?
I mean, the number one insight I hope is remembering that human that you're working with, right? Like, failing to consider how emotions are going to affect employees on a continuous basis is, giving or going to leave you with blind spots. And, if you can figure out ways to support that full human, so whether it's a new parent or, somebody who has a sick parent or friend or partner, or even if it's just somebody who's like, hey, I am super overloaded right now, or I'm about to move and oh my God, how am I supposed to focus on things because my home is a wreck and I don't even know where like my cereal bowl is. Just really remember that everybody is showing up to work with a bunch of other things going on in their lives, and to lead with kindness. And then I guess the last takeaway I want people to kind of have from this is the way we've worked and have always worked is changing. And it's okay to not exactly know what that means and what you should be doing. But there's a huge opportunity, today to innovate and try new things, and don't rely on the way things were done before the pandemic, because those things aren't going to work anymore. It's exciting to me to think about. We have no idea what the future holds, and we get to help shape that. So when you're feeling overwhelmed by those feelings of like, oh my God, what do I do? These things aren't happening. And, I would have done this, but that's not going to work in this context. Try to throw out everything that as hard as that is, and, just dream up what you wish could happen, and then do some really easy exercises online and just figure out like, how might we, right? Like, if you've never heard of that, it's a design thinking approach to problems. Come up with the problems, and then it's a fun activity to just kind of go through and totally think about things in a new perspective.
Wow. Thank you so much, Heidi, for being on Reimagining Company Culture today. As a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. We know that this is a requirement for companies to succeed overall.